Hey guys, Bart the Nature Guy here. Welcome to a beautiful spring day. You can start to see the green in the trees the last couple of weeks, especially over your spring break. Definitely kind of changed what it's like being outside and enjoying the outdoors. Things are greening up. I just heard wood ducks go by. A pileated woodpecker that was here a couple weeks ago came by again as well. So I'm just enjoying being outside. This is kind of the last wrap up of our kind of shelter stuff for survival. You know, if you remember back, we talked about survival in the threes. So it's like 3 weeks without food, 3 days without water, 3 hours without shelter, 3 minutes without air, and 3 seconds without hope. Is kind of the kind of theory around some of that belief system in survival. And you know, we have hope. We're okay. We're not struggling with our air, so we're really into shelter. We're kind of backing our way into it, and we'll keep going as we go into water and food next. But right now, this is kind of the last week of shelter, and the last thing I wanted to go over is cordage. You know, I talked about lashing poles together and frapping, which is kind of binding those lashes together in between the poles, making it nice and tight and secure. But what if you don't have anything? What if you don't have a string? You know, you don't have paracord. Like a lot of survivalist people will always bring paracord in the woods, and you're like, I don't have that. So there's a couple things you can do. One is that something that you have on you is a shoelace. And so I think I brought this up when I was in some of the classes that I was teaching, is just remember, like if you're done walking for the day and you're looking to build a shelter, you can just pull a shoelace out, use that overnight, take your shelter down in the morning, use your shoelace, put it back in, and go along your way. You can also use, like, I won't really lift up my shirt too much, but I could, like, the bottom of my shirt here. So in the theory around this is kind of, or thought process is, you know, if I cut an inch off this all the way around, so that's about 2 feet, then I have 2 feet. So just imagine this is like the bottom of my t-shirt and another 2 feet. So if I'm going around the bottom of my t-shirt and cutting like a you know, 1 inch piece, I might lose like 1.5 inches or 2 inches off the bottom of my t-shirt, but it's really not going to affect my insulation too much. And then I actually have like probably what would be 5 to 7, 8 feet of actual cloth, you know, cloth material to use for tying stuff together. And this is kind of getting into what if you don't have that. So, and we're kind of getting into cordage, and cordage is basically just development using natural materials, developing into a string, and it's can be really effective. It's really strong. But it's not all plants are the same. So there's a couple plants that I think of when I think of making cordage. One is fireweed. I don't have any with that with me today. The other one that just happens to be in my area a lot is linden tree bark. And linden tree bark just is a really good tree. It's like the inner bark that you're using, so you're not really using the outer bark. So when you think of like having a piece of bark, now I love this stuff because it gets run over by cars in my neighborhood, and so it's like a boulevard tree, which means, you know, like it's the trees grow in that little space between the sidewalk and the road. There's that little strip of grass sometimes, and they put some trees in there. In Minneapolis, we've really been struggling with an invasive species called emerald ash borer, and it's taken out a lot of the trees on the boulevard. But there's another tree that's often there too, which is called a linden tree. Linden trees have great bark for cordage, and it's not all bark's the same, but you can kind of see here how it is all separated, and it kind of pulls off in strips, and these strips can be pretty strong. So as you pull these apart, and here's one of those testers that I can do. I'm just ripping that apart here, but listen to this. Can you hear that? Like, I'm tugging on that, and it really doesn't, it moves, it's really movable, but it's still strong. That one broke, but look at this. This is, and that's going to be like a good tester to make sure it's a good piece for cordage too. So if you're pulling this apart and it's not really working very well, like, this is an important way to kind of do that, to give it a little bit of a test. And it also loosens it up. If you've ever had a teacher give you like a fresh piece of clay, and like they're like, mess with it, like you have to like press into it and start kind of breaking it apart so it can actually get movable. This stuff's the same way. It's been sitting on a tree for possibly years. It's a softwood, it's not a hardwood. If you get a hardwood, like I saw this stuff in a park, and I was like, oh, this is gonna be great cordage. I saw it right away, and I was like, look at the strips on this is gonna be perfect. But look at this stuff. Like, this is like much more than this little thin piece of bark, right? This is a big thick piece, but watch. It just pulls apart. It's terrible. So it's gonna make a great fire starter for me, but it is not gonna make great cordage. So a thin little strip of bark like this is super helpful. There's also little branches. I just picked up a cottonwood tree, but if you see all these knots on them, you know, like it's a soft wood, it's very movable, cottonwood. Sorry, I got a plane going overhead right now, but all the knots on there do not make it like good to get big long strips like this. So there's just things to look at for different types of plants. Feel free to look up more information on cordage as you're going forward. Just for the sake of conversation today, I'm going to work with this linden tree stuff and really find it easy to work with. And like, you know, it's curved this way, so I'm actually breaking it and pushing it the other way. So I'm kind of breaking the fibers apart, and I'm just starting to mess with it a little bit. So, and as you do that, and I'm kind of moving it back and forth, you notice it really does move quite a bit, and it loosens up. Now, what we get to is more like a piece kind of like this. It gets there, and you still have these little pieces of bark on there, so it's part of it is just kind of working those off. So you're kind of working these little outer pieces of bark off, trying to find that nice inner bark piece right here. So over time, you're gonna get it to where it's kind of looks about like this. Okay, and so you're basically what you're gonna start doing is twisting this stuff up like this. You can see that twist pretty well. And the easiest way to explain it is if you've ever had a yo-yo and you've seen it spin at the bottom and it kind of winds up, and then you let it go and it unspins. We don't want that to happen. We're using this is kind of a two-strand cordage. Different than braiding with 3. We'll braid with 3 another time, especially if I get you in person in classes again. We might braid with 3. Or this is where you can take this 2-ply or 2-strand cordage and then actually braid it into 3 to get some actual weight-bearing load. A lot of this isn't going to be huge weight-bearing things, but definitely if you had a tripod at the top, you can wrap this around. And my nature engagement video this week, I'm also going to do something called nature frames, and I'll be using this cordage to tie the frame together. So we can kind of, like, if you can look through my hands right there, find a frame, you know, use natural environments to create a frame for you to just kind of look through nature in just one little spot and kind of just take a little snapshot of that little spot, like right there. And we'll be doing that in the nature engagement video, and I'll be using the cordage to tie those sticks together to do that. So one thing I do, now to get a 2-foot piece is really, really nice. It can be really helpful. And what we'll do to get it started is just fold it over. And we'll go left over right here. And all I do is right away is grab it and just take a twist, okay? And so I just make a little loop here. It just goes for my fingers to hold. And as I create this, I'm gonna keep sliding my fingers up and holding this into place. And what I'm doing is rotating to the right. So I'm spinning this inner bark to the right, and then I grab it with my other fingers and I rotate it left. So I spin to the right, and I rotate it left, and I spin to the right and rotate it left. And I can actually get going pretty fast with this. So it's spinning to the right, just 2 or 3, and it's just like, you have to find that spot where you don't want to break it. So if you've ever rolled out like a piece of Play-Doh, like a snake, and all of a sudden you get to that spot where it gets too thin and you're like, oh, this last one's gonna break it, it rolls off and you have like 2 points and it kind of, you broke it, right? This is that same way. You don't wanna break this stuff. You wanna get to that nice spot where it's even, you feel like you're feeling these fibers and going, okay, I know I can take it about this far. And you know, it could be 1 twist, 2 twists, it kind of stops. And as soon as I feel that, I give it just a little bit more and then rotate it to the left. And so you see my hands here, I'm rotating to the right and then I'm bringing it to the left. And I just keep doing that. And every time I do it, if you can start to see, it starts to create a nice little string. And I'm just taking this to the end so I can teach you, like, that's not gonna get you a lot of rope. And so what happens when you get to the end? So I'm just kind of quickly working through this end just to get, so I can get you to the example. And I'm gonna kind of fly through this a little bit faster than what I normally would. So I apologize, but it's also, again, just rotating to the right, bring it across to the left. Now you have that fresh piece that's on the right now, and you're just kind of just working in reverse here. Now you have about 2 to 3 inches on each side. What do I do now? So what I might do now is find a new piece. Okay, so now I have a new piece of cordage here. New piece, I'm gonna strip this down a little bit and just make sure I have it kind of smoothed out, use my fingers a little bit, kind of make sure it's all in good shape. You kind of see I'm just kind of messing with it. I'm just kind of getting to know it. It's a weird way to put it, but I'm just kind of figuring it out. Like, is it a good piece? Is it strong? All right, I think it is. Now I have this end piece here. What do? I'm gonna simply just lay that right next to it and start working it in like it's a normal piece. So it's gonna double in thickness for a little bit, but it's gonna rotate. So all you're doing is working these pieces in. So I'm gonna take this piece and put it on this side, and I'm just spinning it in. And what it does is kind of act like, if you remember those little like finger traps like you get it like little kid cart, you know, like you might get them at like a birthday party and you put the 2 fingers in, and when you try to pull it out, it kind of grabs on. The more you pull this, the tighter this gets. And actually, you can kind of see now, I have those 2 new pieces in there, and they're not coming apart. They're integrated now into the new cordage, and now I'm back to just, now there's this 2 pieces. So you can kind of see it gets a little thick, thins back out, and I can grab another piece and another piece and just kind of keep adding this. So I have this long piece right now. I've been making this with the kids that I've been teaching in live classes. I'm going to see how long I can make this. With every live class, I'm going to keep the same piece. I might even incorporate some of this cordage into this piece, and see how long of a rope I can make. And then obviously you can kind of see it just turns into a nice spiraled piece of string. And again, watch it, I can put it in my hand, roll it up nice and tight so it's still movable, it doesn't break, and makes a really nice piece of string. That's it. That's kind of the final part of our shelter piece, is just building some cordage. So you're spinning to the right and then you just rotate it left. It's on a big picture here, this is just a huge piece of bark, but you're rotating it and you're spinning it to the right, and then you'll spin it to the right, and then you rotate it left, and then you have this piece, and then you spin it to the right and rotate it left. It's just kind of a big example. Spin right, rotate left, and you're basically creating a spiral. It's a little different again than like a traditional 3-strand braid, but we will get into that. And definitely, if you had a piece like this long and you had like 3 of them, you could definitely do that and add some strength to the system. So it's really fun to do. It can be really meditative too, especially if you're in a survival situation. Part of it is boredom. Great way to kill some time as well. So take care, everybody. Bart the Nature Guy, peace out. We'll talk to you later in the nature video called Nature's Frame. So I hope you all have a good week. I'm super happy that I get to start to see some of you all in person. So take care. Have a great week.